Pornivo Jimata Wipun Nagi.
In 1991, George Lucas's already immense Star Wars galaxy started getting a lot bigger. Alan Dean Foster's Splinter of the Mind's Eye in 1978, along with issues of the Marvel comic, opened up the possibility for more fiction, but in 91, the levee broke, and the universe expanded exponentially. After Heir to the Empire, there was Dark Force Rising, then The Last Command, the Dark Empire trilogy, the long-running X-Wing series, and soon, dozens more. As these entries raced down the timeline, plenty of gaps still remained in the original trilogy, especially the events leading up to the death of Jabba the Hutt and the Battle of Endor. In 1996, Lucasfilm announced they would shed light on these moments in a rare multimedia event. A lost episode of the saga was going to be told in 3 parts, a novel written by Steve Perry, 6 comics published by Dark Horse, and a video game developed for the Nintendo 64. A soundtrack was also composed by a close colleague of John Williams, Joel McNeely. While all aiming to document the same passage of time, each medium took its own liberties with the characters. The book arrived in March, the comics ran through October, and the video game was released on December 3rd. Shadows of the Empire took place between The Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi. It was in this story bridge that Han Solo took a carbonite nap, Leia planned his rescue, Vader searched for his son, and Luke replaced the lightsaber sitting at the bottom of Cloud City. The Black Sun crime lord Prince Shizor and his accomplice Guri both made introductory appearances, and sought revenge on Darth Vader by destroying the Sith Lord's recently revealed heir. The video game followed smuggler and smart guy Dash Rendar and his co-pilot droid Lebo. The two helped out the Rebel Alliance and acted as Luke's personal bodyguards. Starting his story during the Battle of Hoth, Dash hopped into a snowspeeder and ended up on the short end of the battle to defend the shield generator. 2 years before Rogue Squadron, this in and out of cockpit sequence became the first 3D flight across the snowcaps of Hoth. Numerous players have confessed to never experiencing the rest of the game because they were busy replaying the first stage. The other 9 levels took Dash to a junkyard on Ord Mantell in search of bounty hunter IG-88, a spaceport on Gaul in pursuit of kidnapper Boba Fett, the hive of Mos Eisley for a swoop chase, the Imperial freighter Suprosa to steal the Death Star 2 plans, Prince Shizor's palace to rescue Princess Leia, and finally Shizor's Skyhook Station, orbiting above the Imperial City. Players had a short time to get used to the Nintendo 64 analog stick before taking on Shadow's trio of gameplay perspectives. First person, third person, and an additional cinematic view were all available. Players could control their aim in third person and strap on a rechargeable jetpack to rocket through specific areas. A few dogfighting turret challenges popped up while Lebo sat in the cockpit, and the finale gave you direct control of Dash's ship, the Outrider, as you circled through Shizor's Skyhook alongside Luke's X-Wing, Lando's Falcon, and Vader's TIE Fighter fleet. The quest could be blasted through in less than 2 hours, and even if it's often only remembered for its first few minutes of tow cables and probe droids, Shadows of the Empire is considered one of the better licensed games on the N64. Despite the fact that Dash was a minor character in the novel, story adjustments were made to help the hero take center stage. Finishing the game on easy made it appear as if Dash died in the destruction of the Skyhook, but completion on medium and above revealed he escaped into obscurity. The following September, Shadows was cast on the PC with polished visuals, animated cutscenes, and an accomplished list of voiceover talent. By the turn of the century, there were a multitude of various genres that had been infused with the Force, but there was still one realm to be traversed: role-playing. The massive world of Galaxies launched in July of 2003, and a single-player RPG arrived 2 weeks later. The inspiration for Lucas's first contribution to console role-playing was varied. Thematically, the game based its roots on a series of graphic novels, much like Shadows of the Empire. The Tales of the Jedi Saga, which was initially born of veteran Star Wars contributing author Tom Veitch in 1993, spanned a series of 8 chronicles set in an era that would become known as the Old Republic. The saga surrounded the rise and fall of Jedi Ulic Qel-Droma, 4000 BBY, meaning 4,000 years before the Battle of Yavin. Tales of the Jedi spanned a lengthy period, enlightening many aspects of the early chronology of expanded fiction, such as the trials of the fallen Jedi Exar Kun and a wealth of Sith mythology comprising patriarchs such as Freeden Nad, Naga Sadow, and Marco Ragnos. The first 5 installments were compiled into a series known as the Knights of the Old Republic. In order to account for more creative freedom and less continuity issues, developer BioWare decided to set its game in this ancient universe. As the developers of several highly successful Dungeons & Dragons adaptations, like early entries in the Baldur's Gate series and the more traditional Neverwinter Nights, BioWare was well versed with a variety of role-playing styles. The company decided to base the system of KOTOR on the already existing Star Wars pen and paper role-playing game, created by Wizards of the Coast in 1999. BioWare adopted its tried-and-true D20 system, which D&D players had used for decades. Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic was released for the Xbox on July 15, 2003. Statistics, level advancement, skills, and feats all progressed very much like Neverwinter Nights, with BioWare opting to follow the D&D's 3rd edition rules. Combat was real-time, however the action could be paused to allow for turn-based strategy. Applicable abilities were issued from a command bar, and various actions could be queued up while the combat was paused. In order to circumvent the lack of extraordinary magical items and armor, BioWare employed a customization system which allowed for more varied equipment. Certain types of armor, weapons, and even lightsabers were upgradable. Adding parts enhanced the effectiveness of items and allowed players to change the color of their blade.
The Force is complicated. Even I, with all my training, cannot fully understand it yet. This is a matter best left to the wise masters of the Jedi Council.
As you spent time with other party members, various buried story tidbits and hidden conversations were discovered. By getting to know the crew, the player fleshed out many subtle details of exposition. One aspect of KOTOR that had nothing to do with D&D was the light and dark scale. Similar to Jedi Knight, a gauge measured the force persuasion of your party. The hero's scale was almost entirely dictated by the player, while other characters entered the party with preconceived ideals. The choices made throughout the game directed you towards a rise to the light or a fall to the dark. With a vast amount of hidden conversations and various side quests to accomplish, the amount of light-dark stimuli was fairly extensive and added another level of personal modification. When everything worked, Knights offered a uniquely immersive Jedi experience. The ability to watch your Jedi grow in power and identity had not yet been realized on such a scale. Unfortunately, KOTOR was not without its technical problems. It was not uncommon for your seasoned Jedi to miss an enemy several times in a row. Party members would become unresponsive or walk right in the middle of cinemas, alien languages would repeat familiar phonetic phrases, and side stories brought about incredibly long circular conversations. Despite the multitudes of characters, there were very few models, which sometimes led to the extensive repetition of certain faces. Although the light and dark mechanic added a great deal of depth to the game, most decisions felt like they were either follow the story or do something mean, rather than walking the path of a light or dark Jedi. Unlike Shadows of the Empire, the source material served only as inspiration, not adaptation. Knights of the Old Republic, the game, began in 3956 BBY. After a battle with the Sith, your character, a member of the Republic, awoke on board a nearly demolished Endar Spire. After an encounter with the Sith known as Darth Bandon, you narrowly escaped with pilot Cartho Nassi, crash landing on the Sith-occupied Terrace. The Jedi Bastila Shan had also crashed on the planet of Terrace and was being held prisoner. She possessed a powerful permutation of the Force known as battle meditation, a concept featured in Tales of the Jedi. Battle meditation allowed Bastila to seamlessly coordinate the Republic forces. If the Republic was to prevail, Bastila needed to be rescued. While on Terrace, you happen to cross the young Twi'lek mission Val and her Wookiee companion Zalbar. With their help, you and Karth were able to infiltrate a crooked swoop gang to free Bastila. The Mandalorian mercenary Canderous Ordo facilitated your escape with the aid of the utility droid T3M4 and the Ebon Hawk, formerly owned by Underworld boss Davik Kang. Darth Malak, having recently usurped the mantle of Dark Lord from his master, the enigmatic Darth Revan, rained hellfire upon Terrace, as the Hawk made a narrow escape.
We Jedi know victory over the Sith will not come through martial might.
Bastila then enlightened you of your innate Force potential. While studying in the Jedi Enclave on Dantooine, you were able to make some sense of visions plaguing your dreams. The Council also made light of the apparent Force bond between you and Bastila, and that Bastila shared your thoughts of Malak and Revan. Eventually, the Council conceded and allowed you to begin training as a Jedi, which culminated in a confrontation and the redemption of the fallen Jedi Juhani. You were then tasked with unlocking various star maps to reveal the location of the legendary Star Forge. Traversing the barren endlessness of Tatooine, the dense ancient forests of Kashyyyk, and the darkened fathoms of Manan, the party faced countless sources of resistance from the likes of the Zerka Corporation, the revenge-bent Calo Nord, and Malak's apprentice, Darth Bandon. Along the way, you were joined by the peaceful Jedi hermit Jolee Bindo and the antagonistic battle droid HK-47.
I just don't like organic meat bags. Except for the master, of course.
All this time and you still haven't figured it out.
Your hunt for Malak and the Star Forge forced you to confront what some consider one of the greatest unexpected moments in gaming history. Roughly two-thirds into the plot, a realization presented itself that possibly shifted your perception on all of the trials leading up to that moment, and certainly impacted all subsequent events. The story swerve didn't change the fundamental aspects of gameplay, but it did change the player's point of view of the story. After discovering a mysterious planet born of ship debris, you were able to convince a tribe of a race of ancients known as the Rakata to aid you in your final step towards the Star Forge. You finally vanquished the traitorous Malak, and based on your actions throughout the course of the game, forged a new future for the galaxy. Knights of the Old Republic was a critical smash and fan favorite. It was instantly embraced by scores of RPG fans and pretty much anyone else with an Xbox. The adventure was released on the PC and Mac 4 months later. It was one of the biggest Star Wars stories ever stuffed into one galaxy-wide video game arc. The ability to take two different paths and the multitudes of dialogue variations made more than one playthrough rather tempting. Such a well-received game only amped up fans' expectations for the hopeful follow-up. They didn't have long to wait. Due to the incredibly high demand, the continuation of the Old Republic began just over a year later. BioWare, in an attempt to pursue developing custom titles like Jade Empire and Dragon Age, outsourced Knights 2 to Obsidian Entertainment. Obsidian was made up of many members of the former Black Isle Studios, which was known for releasing excellent Dungeons & Dragons adaptations such as the Icewind Dale series and Planescape Torment. Obsidian needed to crank out the sequel with maximum efficiency, which was a huge challenge considering the wealth of content involved. Knights of the Old Republic 2: The Sith Lords was released on December 6, 2004. Gameplay remained virtually unchanged. Certain cosmetic facelifts were added, and some systems were refined, but for the most part, the overall experience felt very close to the first game. Although this meant similar technical snags and glitches that were present in the first, Obsidian knew that content and story were what made the original so successful. Your party members were now greatly influenced by the player's actions. The central character, known as the Jedi Exile, held sway over the party, and had the power to bring those steeped in darkness back to the light, or cause those gifted with the light to fall. The Exile could even train characters, greatly enhancing your party's Jedi capabilities. The story of the Sith Lords began roughly 5 years after the events of Knights of the Old Republic. The galaxy was in the midst of an epic war, and with the Jedi all but wiped out, the Sith were emerging as the victor. In the wake of the Mandalorian Wars, the Republic was beginning to crumble. Players met the Jedi Exile asleep on board the ravaged Ebon Hawk. After being taken to a mining facility on Paragus II, you discovered two companions, a clandestine rogue, Atten Rand, and a wise crone calling herself Kreia. The three banded together and assaulted the serial killer HK-50 and the rebel ship Harbinger, which was overrun with Sith. With the aid of the droid T3-M4, the party narrowly avoided the clutches of the horrifying husk of Darth Sion, and caused cataclysmic damage to Paragus.
Like so many Jedi, you hear, but you do not listen. You have much to learn.
After escaping to the planet of Telos, the Exile and Kreia discovered they shared another Force bond. When one was affected, be it beneficial or malign, the other was affected as well. Kreia also noticed a dormant Force energy in the Exile and offered to help restore its potential. Eventually, the party discovered a hidden sanctuary in the polar regions of Telos. There, you discovered the Exile had gone against the Council's wishes and fought for the Republic in the Mandalorian Wars. It was your help that made the difference on Malachor 5, however, the price was dear. Many lives were lost, and you were called by the Council to answer for your crimes. Although thought dead, several members of that council had gone into hiding on various systems, so you set out to find the Jedis Kavar, Vrook, and Zez Kaiel. Much like the first game, this provided the impetus to traverse multiple planetary environments. The Jedi returned to Dantooine and Korriban, both locales in the first game, along with the shady slums of Nar Shaddaa, the ancient world of Onderon and its moon Duxon, which were featured heavily in the original Tales of the Jedi content, and the celestial graveyard of Malachor 5. Along the way, the Exile was joined by the Mandalorian war veteran Bao Dur, the apprentice to the Dark Lord Darth Nihilus Visas Mar, a droid programmed with the intelligence of underworld kingpin Goto, and the legendary Mandalore himself. Depending on the Exile's alignment, the bounty hunters Mira or Hanhar would follow your path, and gender determined whether you were sought out by Brianna, the Jedi handmaiden, or Michael, the Jedi disciple. There was no prominent plot twist as there was in the original. The Sith Lords relied on subtle shifts and the gradual building of information. As the story went on, players became more and more aware of their place in the universe, and tread a path that forced the exile into self-discovery and acceptance. Your team, light or dark, destroyed the already battle-worn Ravager and returned to the scarred surface of Malachor to end a long obscured threat. For the amount of content squeezed into the development timeframe, Obsidian was able to create an incredibly deep sequel that told its own story while also enriching the first. Much like Knights 1, the Sith Lords was met with critical praise and fan favor, though it's largely regarded as the weaker of the two KOTOR games. Expectations have been high for a second sequel, and a rumor set ablaze by EA's CEO regarding a possible MMORPG based in the Old Republic era reminded us the history books are yet to be finished. Whether the series continues on or not, it can certainly be said that the Knights of the Old Republic games have made a profound mark on expanded fiction. Although the Knights of the Old Republic series won both critical and public acclaim, it was certainly not without its continuity issues and idiosyncrasies. Some of the largest question marks stem from the game's incredibly distant timeline. The source material from which KOTOR took its inspiration, Tales of the Jedi, was set 4,000 years before the Battle of Yavin. In keeping with the logical timeline, it depicted a much more primitive past, complete with skeletal ships with membranous wings and roughly hewn stone temples and dwellings. However, the transition from graphic novels to video game grounded it in a somewhat unrealistic chronology. The entire aesthetic of the universe changed in favor of a style more similar to the films. With the exception of a few monsters and references to Freed and Nad and other Sith Lords, the characters in the plot of the game bore very little resemblance to that of the graphic novels. These discrepancies all led up to a timeline where the technological, ecological, and cultural advancements that took place over the 40-year gap between comic and game eclipsed any progression made over the subsequent 4,000. Shadows of the Empire opened a portal into moments of the present that had previously been hidden or silenced. It dealt the final strike of the Empire and forecast the Jedi's triumphant return. Knights of the Old Republic glanced far, far into the past, uncovering secret relics from the dawn of technology in an era pivotal to the balance of the Force. It proved that, in Star Wars, the more things change, the more they stay the same. Based on the inked works of novels and comics, these two properties grew from a more concrete narrative than most LucasArts games, which made them appeal to both the fan of the canon and the ardent player. In Episode 8, we'll log into interactive Star Wars on the grandest scale. Relive with us the turbulent history behind the largest multiplayer community of smugglers, bounty hunters, officers, and Jedis in the world.